Welcome, welcome. This is the State of the City pre-show. My name is Erik Hanberg, and I am the host of the Citizen Tacoma podcast. On the podcast, I get to interview elected and community leaders about what's happening in our community. It's a great place to nerd out about civic issues, and that's exactly what we're doing here tonight on the pre-show. We are previewing Mayor Victoria Woodards' State of the City conversation. Tonight's theme is Our Community. The mayor will be discussing how our community is working together to help everyone in Tacoma. My guests today to preview this conversation are Maralise Quan, Executive Director of the Center for Dialog and Resolution. Welcome, Maralise.
Thank you.
And Dona Ponepinto, President and CEO for the United Way of Pierce County. Welcome, Dona.
Thank you. Good to be here.
And it's also exciting that we have Mayor Victoria Woodards herself here as well. Thank you for being here, Mayor.
Thank you, Erik, and thank you to Maralise and Dona.
So I'd like to start with you, Maralise. You are at the Center for Dialogue and Resolution. And I have to say, dialogue and resolution sound like two things we could all use a lot of right now. So I know that dialogue, like real dialogue between people, really takes a lot of work. For someone watching who needs to have a hard conversation with someone, what are some suggestions that you have for folks who need to participate in that right now?
Well, thank you so much for being able to join all of you and to be able to have this conversation. And we have a first name dialogue and a second name resolution, because talking for talking's sake doesn't really get you too far. It's to be able to put our heads together and reach resolution. So the first thing is, when things are tough and uncomfortable, often we avoid a conversation. So one of the most powerful ways to have a tough dialogue is to actually step up to the plate and say, would you be willing to talk to me about this? And that takes a lot of courage. It takes a lot of willingness. And the most powerful thing is to know that you are in relationship with that other person, whether you're banging heads or you love each other and just can't see eye to eye. That is a relationship, and you value the person over the issues that you're talking about. That's a frame of mind to show up. The second powerful thing is take some deep breaths, because especially in times of COVID, we are all this close to trauma. One little thing can trigger any one of us, whether it be a Zoom meeting that goes bad or somebody who interrupts you or whatever. So a couple deep breaths can bring you back to calm and out of that triggered, to be able to be gracious and open. My third hint is, if you would listen before you actually talk, you'll learn a lot from the other person about what they need, what they want, and how they look at the world so bizarrely differently than you, that you can figure out it's not that they're doing something to do it to you, it's just they look at the world differently. And so it's that way of bringing in grace and curiosity, even when we are deeply, deeply divided and have differences. And amazing things happen with that curiosity, with keeping yourself calm enough to be able to really listen to the other. And it does happen that when one side is passionate about it and you have listened carefully, reciprocity, they're willing to listen to you as well. It's not that simple. That's why the center exists. But that's your do-it-yourself at home version. Does that work?
I really appreciate that. That's a great answer. I want to ask, you mentioned that you have dialogue and resolution. What comes after dialogue? There is a lot that can divide people right now. Politics, class, race can all become wedges. But even something like, are you masked or unmasked can become a wedge. As a community, how do we work together across divides like that during hard times such as these?
I'm actually going to say something controversial.
Ooh.
I'm going to say, thanks to COVID being in our life, it's like a light was turned on. A friend of mine said this to me this morning. A light was turned on, and all of a sudden you can see all the cockroaches. We've had classism, sexism, racism. We've had all those isms in our life, but we've been able to avoid them, to ignore them, that as long as they don't touch me, to not see them. So I think one of the powerful things out of COVID is stuff is on the table and we need to talk it through. Now, it's on the table. We need to talk it through. How do we actually get to the point where we're going to have some agreements, some possibilities? One is what mediators use a lot at our center is to reframe the question, Do I have to wear a mask? Is it a freedom to wear a mask? Do I want to? I don't want to. At the center, we're framing it from the perspective of seeing what is the value we have all learned in the mask, social distancing during COVID. We have learned that you wash your hands, you keep your distance, and you wear a mask, and you don't even get the common cold. Just think about it. When did you last have a case of the sniffles? We have learned what they taught us in kindergarten, all of us, and we've practiced those good skills. Let's keep them up as the scientists try to figure out how the vaccine works, what are the mutations, what's the right thing. And so at the center, we're inviting not to divide people, but to treat all of us alike. In public, in the public spaces, we'll be wearing masks. Those who are vaccinated in a small room doing mediation, they may end up taking off their masks. But it's that approach to, is there anything value we have learned from the mask? And then have the conversation, and it tends to de-escalate and open up the possibility. And the last point I just want to make sure is, if we are a compassionate city, like our mayor is asking us to pick up the mantle as citizens of our community and step in, that does mean you need to bring your passion with you. That's compassion. But you also have to bring your compassion to the fact that you do not want to live in a city with poverty, with hunger, without good health, that we each have a role to play in that. And I look forward to 2021, us embracing as a community, what does it mean to be compassionate? And how do I step up in a divided world to say we do have some commonality? All human life is valuable, precious, and we should respect it in one another.
Thank you, Maralise. And you mentioning the compassionate city brings up a question to you, Mayor Woodards. You know, we have this really strong sense of civic pride here in Tacoma, Tacoma boosterism, grit city, South Sound proud. Do you think that spirit that we have, that Tacoma spirit, changes how we tackle big problems together in a way that's different from how other places might do it?
I'm partial. I'm absolutely
Sure.
partial. Whenever I introduce myself, I say I'm the mayor of Tacoma, Washington, the greatest city in the universe. So I already have high expectations of our city, and these are not high expectations that I created. These are the high expectations we hold ourselves to as a city that I've seen. And I do think we handle things differently. If we go back to the summer, and when we think about the demonstrations that were held in our community. And when we look to the city to the north and the biggest city to the south, when we look at what happened in their cities versus what happened in Tacoma, that tells you how different our city is. We can march with 10,000 people and show our passion and show our demand for change, but we don't have to destroy anything in order to do that. And so I think Tacoma is different. When I decided last year to launch Compassionate Tacoma, I didn't necessarily launch it because I thought Tacoma wasn't compassionate enough. I launched it because there can always be more compassion, but I launched it because I see so much compassion already. And I think it's something we actually need to lift up. Now, when I launched it a year ago in March, I had no idea that within a week of launching Compassionate Tacoma, we would get into COVID and need compassion more than we've ever needed compassion. But I launched it because I think Maralise said it as well, and I'll say it in my own different way, is that, let's be real, the issues will be the issues, and there will be lots of them, right? Maralise just hinted to the fact that, every issue that we thought existed before COVID, even some that we tried to ignore, have been exacerbated and brought to the front because of COVID. And I think because of that, it's really important that we think about compassion every time that we're in the midst of it. So as I say, the issues will be the issues, but how we treat each other, how we come to the aid of one another, how we have dialogue together, how we even disagree is where compassion comes in. And I'll just give you another example for those of you who've been watching this. So last week, we were having brought forward the non-interim regulations, and now it's the interim regulations. Second reading is tomorrow. Our community is very divided on this issue. But what we've got to do is we've all got to come to the table. And I think a lot of people have. I'm not saying that nobody's at the table, but it's not the environment against jobs. We need both. We need good paying jobs so that we can support our families, but we also need an environment to leave, a good environment to leave to our children, right? We have this beautiful waterfront. Took us a long time to clean it up. We should be thinking about being the greenest, cleanest city in the world, not fighting over whether or not we want to be clean or not. Because what we know is that at the end of the day, even talking to people on opposite sides, everybody wants the same exact thing. Nobody wants to work in a dirty port. Nobody wants to live by a dirty port. I mean, everybody wants the same. So how can we come together and reach the goal of being the greenest, cleanest city in the universe?
Thank you for that, Mayor. Building on that, I want to turn to Dona Ponepinto of the United Way of Pierce County. I think we know that community is hard if people are falling out the bottom of it from job loss or whatever it is. And I'm interested in Pierce County Connected, which was a project both you and the Greater Tacoma Community Foundation built last year. Can you tell me more about that work that got so many people in our community through this difficult time?
Yes, and you know, to add to what both the mayor and Maralise were saying about this idea of compassion. So when you think about compassion in terms of the philanthropic community, Pierce County Connected to me was a shining example of that. United Way and the Greater Tacoma Community Foundation, you know, we came together, you know, everything shut down March 13th. I think we were on the phone with each other, you know, during that week and set up what we call this aligned philanthropy, where it's United Way, Greater Tacoma Community Foundation, all of the family foundations, corporate foundations coming together to say, you know what, can we grow a pool of funding that we can get back out into the community to meet those most urgent and make rapid responses. So cut through all of the paperwork and let's figure out how we can simplify a process and get the resources out as quickly as we can. So, you know, when we created this, we wanted to make sure that we were focused on equity, that we were focused on being transparent to the community, but also to making sure that this was a really streamlined process. You know, anyone who has filled out grant applications knows they can be very overwhelming. And we wanted to say, tell us how you're impacted and how you would use some funds. And we got those out as quickly as possible. And what we also did is targeted initially food insecurity. In fact, food insecurity continues to be an issue. Childcare primarily for first responders at the beginning, and then housing. We all know that affordable housing was a problem before the pandemic. You know, during the pandemic, you had individuals who were homeless and making sure that they were safely housed, as well as making sure people stayed in their housing. So we were able to raise about $7.9 million.
Wow.
And we have used it all. We allocated it all out. The last group of funds went to focus on vaccine equity. So targeting many of the organizations in the community that could get information out to the populations that they serve, so that they had all the information they needed to make decisions about getting vaccinated and the ease of getting vaccinated, getting them to and from those locations. So we were pretty excited about that. But, you know, it also, I think, helped the philanthropic community see all of the things that are under the hood. It helped the philanthropic community see all the things that were there before, but exacerbated as a result of the pandemic, which I think was great. It was a good learning for all of us. We learned about a lot of wonderful organizations in the community, quite frankly, that we didn't know about.
That's great. And your work is really providing a financial bridge to people, which I'm sure was badly needed. But you have some ongoing programs that are starting up, including a pilot to help some folks with a small monthly guaranteed income. Can you share more about that? It sounded really interesting.
Yes, it is. And we're excited to partner with the mayor, Greater Tacoma Community Foundation, and other partners as well. This is the first of its kind demonstration that's in Tacoma, and it's really designed to serve populations that are disproportionately impacted, and they're being affected by economic challenges. So that's primarily what it's about. And United Way's role is to help in the implementation of it. You know, when we talk about guaranteed income, it's a supplement. It's not meant to replace wages that someone is earning. And what we plan to do is to target 100 families, random, $500 a month for 12 months. We'll also have a control group. We're working with the mayor's guaranteed income group out of Stockton, and they have some great research partners. So there's a lot of support. University of Pennsylvania is and their research hub is going to be doing all the randomization. We're focused on ALICE. A lot of people in the community have heard that acronym. It's a United Way acronym that stands for Asset Limited Income Constrained Employed. And we know that even during COVID, those are the families, they're working every day. COVID hits, you know, either they lost their jobs, hours reduced, so they're even more on the edge. And they are those families that are just above the poverty level. Yeah. But they're below 200% of poverty level. So they're above, you know, whatever the feds say is $24,500 a year for a family of four. They're above that, but they're still struggling to make ends meet every single day. So we want to target that population. We also know that disproportionate number of ALICE families are families of color. So your BIPOC families. In Tacoma, 40% of those families are ALICE. 40% of our households are ALICE, I should say, in Tacoma. Wow. And when you start peeling that back, you know, in the county, 47% of those households are Black families, 43 are Hispanic. And so we know that we want to have a focus on that, on single head of households as well, with children. And we're continuing to work through it. And doing focus groups. We want to get a lot of information from community residents to help in the design. You know, we want this to be something that is not just, you know, United Way and city putting together, but really getting a lot of rich information from people that are experiencing this every day.
That's really exciting work. I'm excited to hear more about how that pilot goes. Mayor Woodards, how did Tacoma actually get into this work? It's a cool thing to be doing.
It really is, and I'm so honored to be a founding mayor of Mayors for Guaranteed Income, which is a national organization. Was contacted last June, I think, by the then mayor of Stockton, California, Michael Tubbs, who said, you know, you've been following my work, and I've known Michael since I got elected, so was following his work and just learning about what he was doing. And thought, God, this is really great. I wonder if we could ever make this happen in Tacoma. It was a dream, but I have a lot of dreams, so it's been in my head. And he called and said, you know, we're starting this. Would you like to be a founding mayor? And I said, well, I'd love to be a founding mayor, but what does that mean? Because I'm not committed saying Tacoma's going to do this. I got a whole bunch of partners to go talk to because we don't do anything alone. And he said, no, this is just an opportunity to learn. You can bring all your partners to the table that you want to. So I said, yes. And we signed up. And within, I think, 3 months, Jack Dorsey made contributions to the Mayors for the national organization, MGI, and we got $100,000 to begin planning and talking about what a pilot would look like in Tacoma. So first person I called was Dona because of the work with Alice, and we got United Way, Tacoma Housing Authority, Greater Tacoma Community Foundation, Centers for Strong Families, and the Tacoma Urban League at the table and said, okay, how can we make this work? And as we were talking about how we could make this work, Jack Dorsey then donated again, and the 10 founding, I think it's the 10 founding cities all got $500,000 to run a pilot in their city. So now we've got a total of $600,000 to use to get a pilot off the ground. Now it's going to cost us close to $1 million, and we've been talking to partners about fundraising so we can get them, but we have the money for our payments. And so it's just being able to do all of the outreach and the administrative support. And when I say administrative support, not your normal, just make sure they get the check, but checking in with families, surrounding them with as much support as they need and making them a part of our Centers for Strong Family. So it's just a great opportunity for Tacoma. The goal is, we know that local cities cannot hold this alone. Like, cities don't have budgets to support a program like this, but really the goal is to have a successful demonstration. There are going to be 10 to 14 of them going on around the country that we can then show the success of them and why the federal government should be looking at a program. And we're just really excited to be a part. And I'm incredibly grateful for our partners like Dona, who have come to the table to really take the lead in this demonstration project in Tacoma. But it's called GRIT. Just like our city, it's called GRIT, and that stands for Growing Resilience in Tacoma.
I love it. And as I said, I'm really excited to hear more. We are almost out of time, but I want to get in a final question for everyone. What is giving you hope right now? Like, these are hard times. What's giving you hope? Your quick takes. Maralise, what's making you optimistic and hopeful right now?
Tacoma has the capacity to innovate. We've got the innovation we've just heard from. And the other thing is the eviction resolution. We're doing early dialogue between landlords and tenants. And we're getting a lot of people willing to step in and pilot new ideas to see if we can solve the deep underlying problems.
I love it. Dona?
What's given me hope is just overall the generosity of this community, and not generosity just in terms of their resources, but of their time, of their thought leadership. We're very collaborative, and people want to come to the table to figure out, all right, how do we solve for these things? How do we continue to make, Tacoma this great place that we live in and work in every day?
That's a great answer too. Mayor, what's giving you hope right now?
I'm gonna give a sneak peek into tonight's program that you're gonna see in just a second. But there's a part in the opening where I talk about a beautiful angle poster, and the poster says, "Sharp axe for hard wood, strong jaw for hard bread, soft heart for hard times." And what gives me hope in this city are the people. And the fact that everybody has softened their heart for this very hard time that we're in. So for me, it will always be the people of Tacoma.
That's wonderful, and a great thing to close it on. So thank you, Mayor. Thank you, Maralise. Thank you, Dona, for sharing tonight and being guests here on the pre-show. It's been a pleasure.
Thank you.
Yeah, let's get on with the show.
I pledge allegiance to the flag
of the United States
y la república,
for which it stands,
one nation,
under God,
indivisible, with liberty and justice for
para
all.
todos.
I am honored to kick off this State of the City conversation on our community, to discuss not just the important issues that face us, but how we join together collectively to respond to the challenges. Last year in my State of the City address, I announced the Compassionate Tacoma initiative, noting that the issues will be the issues, but how we treat each other, that's what matters. And we have deeply needed and demonstrated compassion as we came together as a community in this unprecedented year of challenges. Many of you may be very familiar with Beautiful Angle, the letterpress poster project that periodically hangs street art throughout the city of Tacoma. They have one poster that speaks well to this issue. The text reads, "Sharp axe for hard wood, strong jaw for hard bread, soft heart for hard times." To me, this is the spirit of how we've come through the challenge of this last year. At the city and Tacoma Public Utilities, examples of the way we've done this include delivering more than 18,000 meals to local seniors and providing more than $5 million in utility assistance. But the council and I do not lift and support this community alone. Today, I am joined by other leaders working with others to make a community-wide impact on important issues. My guests for this important conversation include the Mayor's Youth Commission of Tacoma Vice Chair, Rowan Ali, Justice, Equity, Diversity, and Inclusion team member for the Sunrise Movement and climate justice organizer for Citizens for a Healthy Bay, Marquis Mason, and President and CEO of the Greater Tacoma Community Foundation, Kathi Littmann. Thank you all for joining me here today. I really appreciate you being here, and I'm really excited to have a conversation about what happens in our community and the work that we all do to make Tacoma stronger. And I'm going to start with you, Rowan. While many of us have moved to virtual platforms for working, studying, and socializing, youth in grades K through 12 have had their realities changed dramatically by COVID. Tell us a little bit about what it's been like and how you're managing this.
Yeah, so with the youth, we kind of went into survival mode. With the unprecedented events and the shock of everything going on around us, our priorities had changed, and we really had to listen to the authorities and stay home and follow all the safety regulations and follow all the news that were coming out day by day. So kindergarteners who were excited to start the new year couldn't do so. Freshmen who were going to start their high school career couldn't do so, and seniors that were going to start the most memorable year of their lives couldn't do so either. But the virtual world isn't something new to the youth. We grew up on all sorts of entertainment platforms, so the one really good thing that came out of this is that we were able to quickly adapt, although it was in a awkward manner with school having to be on Zoom and all sorts of testing and education having to shift, and also having to adapt to staying at home and not seeing your friends for months on end.
That was tough, wasn't it?
Yeah, and not seeing your friends and having, to stay at home, and everyone's world had to come all together inside that little house or that little room. So we've been managing quite well. Like I said earlier, our priorities had changed. So some of the greatest moments had to be put on hold. Yeah, for the sake of the country and for the sake of the health of others and us.
Absolutely. Well, thank you for that. And I know it's been an unprecedented year for everybody. And so, Marquis, I'll turn to you as we think about this unprecedented year. And we're so grateful for your leadership as a youth advocate in this community around environmental justice. And so, what is it like to work on something like climate change, especially in this environment, and even more difficult because climate change isn't always something that people can readily see or understand. It's not like issues like COVID-19 or homelessness or systemic racism, but it's so important to our future. And we've seen the climate change even through COVID. So tell me what it's like to be a part of that and to work on that in Tacoma.
Yeah, well, I'd say it's a gift, first and foremost, that I get to do this work, right? I have the privilege and the capacity to do so. But it is hard, right? We're speaking to a very complex and nuanced issue. We have a lot of folks who, don't have the means to engage because they might be, a single parent raising 2 kids. And so, my job as an activist, I feel like it's to, really draw the narrative around, why our climate policy has to be robust and regenerative and really take care of folks. We can't just be talking about the bees and the polar bears, which are important, right? We need to be talking about the community suffering right now. I think we kind of have this perception of the climate crisis is coming, it's down the road, but it's here, right? We're seeing it in our snowpack, and we're seeing it in our communities and over flooding. You know, Tacoma has an issue of flooding, right? And that's only going to get worse. And so we have to really, really speak to what's happening in people's lives now. And we can't just be talking about parts per million, even though, right, those are really important, you know?
Right.
We have to be talking about the people that are suffering now in frontline communities that are going to hit first and worse as this worsens. You know, I believe in really bold, regenerative policies like the Green New Deal. I got my Green New Deal pin because we know we have to increase the quality of living for a lot of folks so that they can care and show up for climate, right? Because they do care, they just have so many other needs that need to be addressed, right? Like making sure that they're paying for rent, right? And make sure their kids are taken care of and they have a quality education, which has been impacted by COVID now. And so I feel like it's my job to build as big coalition as we can because we know we need a lot of folks doing a lot of things.
So, you know, that as I'm looking at the two of you here, right? So you know, as you mentioned, it's working with youth is really going to be a way to change and to get people to pay more attention to the environment. Tell me, Marquis, just as I'm looking at Rowan and at you both, right? Because even our youth commission has, they have an environmental justice committee. But how do you, in this past year and even moving forward, how do you all stay connected and focused on bringing young people into the movement so that, and also educating them in a way that makes sense to them? You just said parts per million, right? It's like, okay, that just goes right over somebody's head. But I do know that it's raining more, or that, you know, it's getting much warmer than it has been before. How do you impart that wisdom to our young people to get them engaged in the movement?
Yeah, so I think we have to really, really push ourselves to be as welcoming as possible to young people. I think we have this really pervasive thing in American culture where we think only experts can speak to the issues, right? Everyone can speak to how their life is impacted by climate change, and we should empower young people who are inheriting, right, a broken economy, a possibly dying planet, all of these systems that are not working for them like it did for their parents and their grandparents. You know, we try to tell them, like, hey, this is your mantle to uphold, and we're going to be here for you, and we're going to support you in your work. You know, I'm really happy to be working with folks like Rowan, who are on the Mayor's Youth Commission, because they've showed up time and time again for really important issues and spoken with such moral clarity. I think that's really what we need right now, is our young people understanding, like, this is their cross to bear, and that they can pursue a better future, and we'll support them.
Great, thank you for that. Well, Kathi, it's pretty impressive, right, to be with these young people. They are so inspiring. I'm like, my goodness. But Kathi, their work wouldn't be possible without organizations like the Greater Tacoma Community Foundation. And so the work that the Greater Tacoma Community Foundation did this year with Pierce County Connected, you all stepped up very quickly and said, okay, we know that nonprofits are going to have a hard time. We know that our community is suffering and we need to be able to provide more services. So talk to me a little bit about Pierce County Connected and your partnership with United Way and how you all brought this to be and the work that you've done over the past year.
So it actually was a tremendous learning experience for us. But we stood up in less than 5 days a community fund that was joined by over 55 philanthropists and by more than 300 individuals. And actually in less than 12 days, we had put out the first $1 million into the community. And it was designed as an urgent and emergent response. So those initial funds that went out were targeted toward making sure that our first responders could be on the job, but also addressing the urgent need, things like food and childcare. We had within 5 days stood up an all-day childcare at Tacoma Public Schools with Metro Parks and Green Trike to take care of emergency responders so that they could go to work. The interesting thing is it really was about being in partnership with government. So, you know, what philanthropy does is we play the role of filling in the gaps, and we play the role of being a catalyst in the areas where we can step forward to move the government agenda. So it's really a partnership with the government, but it's also a partnership with the community. The fact that United Way brought in more than 300 donors to participate in this fund says how much our community cares, because that was done, again, in less than a week. But it was also an experience about trust-based philanthropy and moving the decision-making to the community. Probably the most exciting thing that happened out of Pierce County Connected was our daily mail. So Erica Tucci.
Yes, from Erica, who we love.
From the Cheney Foundation. Brad Cheney and Dona Ponepinto from United Way actually chaired this entire adventure. Wow. So they carried the workload. But Erica stood up a daily mail where we crowdsourced information. We got information. It was a structure that mirrored the emergency operations structure of the county and the city. They would get information from Tacoma Pierce County Health Department, from the city, from various agencies. They'd mash that up with information coming from the ground, from nonprofits. This is what it's like on the ground. Information from individuals that were flowing in through United Way's 211. This is the help I need. Erica's team did a synthesis of that every single morning and sent it out, not just to all the places where the information came in, but to over 110 philanthropic organizations to say, let's align our response so that we're making sure we're having the highest impact and reaching into the community needs. We're going to keep doing that. It was pretty powerful.
It was extremely powerful. And you know what I love about it, just even in hearing all of you talk, is that it's our community, it's our responsibility. And that's why I wanted to do the State of the City this way, is because people don't understand government is but one part of the puzzle, but our work wouldn't be complete without partners like the three of you. And we know that in this unprecedented time, that it takes, you know, there are things like we got to make sure that people are housed, that they have daycare, that they have food. But then we've also got to look at ways to provide hope. And one of the ways that happened, Rowan, is through the Youth Zine. Or Zine, what's the right title?
Zine.
Zine, okay, sorry. But we know that happened through the Youth Zine that you all put together, because we know that art plays a hopeful role in a dark day. So tell us a little bit about the project and what you all did and how you were successful with it.
Yeah, so a zine is a self-publishing, non-commercial piece of art. So it could be a booklet, it could be in digital form, and it's a collection of art. Poetry, anything that falls under the umbrella term. For us, after COVID hit, we were a very interactive commission. We met up once a month and we like to spend time with each other, but when COVID hit, it was kind of like, what now, you know? Yeah. And so we decided that we wanted to create something where all the youth of Tacoma could come together and share and express their worries, their stress, their just what they're going through during this time. We wanted to elevate youth voices during COVID. And we partnered up with lots of programs such as Green Strike Tacoma and Graduate Tacoma. And we were able to get the word out through lots and lots of advertising. We really dived in headfirst with the virtual world because we had to get it out there as much as we can. Yeah, and we was a collection of just so much sort of poetry and drawings, and we really were able to see just how much the youth were impacted in this short time. And unprecedented.
Well, I have my copy on my desk. I read through it. It was so cool to see the expression of our young people. So it's also healing, right? For people to be able to express what they're feeling. And it was a beautiful project. So really grateful. Hopefully when the COVID is over, we can also get it out to everyone in Tacoma who didn't get a copy of it, because it was so well done. And so that's just one thing youth have done over the course of this. Marquis, tell me, much of your organizing and advocacy work is focused on youth, and we just kind of talked about this a little bit, but how is that different? Because like I can remember if this had happened in my lifetime, or it did happen in my lifetime, but if it happened when I was in high school, I don't know that we would have thought about a zine. I don't know that would have come to mind for us. So it's different organizing in my day than it has been in yours. So tell me just a little bit about how youth participation today is different than past generations.
Yeah, you know, I think for generations, right, young people have like led the charge in a lot of areas. But I think what we're coming into is like a new age of empowerment for young people, for young people having the tools and the vocabulary and the resources and the technology to like really show up in a way that's been unprecedented, right? We've seen you know, historic change in the last several years just because younger people are, you know, up on the issues, they understand it, they're contacting their legislators. You know, at Sunrise, we're a movement of young people who are working to create millions of union-wage jobs through climate action. And so, you know, we are trying to instill that information now so that these people, you know, these young people, like I'm young too, right? I'm 24. We grow up into our lives knowing that like climate should be a priority in everything we do, but we also know we have to show up for other movements for justice. we call it the movement of movements, and that's like that we hope the society is trending towards a better place that's more just and equitable for everyone. And in that, we know that like young people are going to have to lead the charge, right? We stand on the shoulders of giants, of our elders who have been marching for generations. And so we know that this is a multi-generational fight and that we're one piece of that puzzle.
But it takes all of us, right? That, I mean, the reality is that it's now we've got young people engaged in the way that makes sense to them. And you've got, I still consider myself a young person, let's be very clear. And you got young people like me, but you've got to find that way to engage people where they are, right? If we're going to make these kinds of changes. And speaking of changes, Kathi, one of the pandemics that we faced this year, in addition to COVID, is the pandemic of systemic racism. And I know that I'm so grateful for the Greater Tacoma Community Foundation for stepping up and wanting to be a part of the change that we want to see in our city. We've launched Heal the Heart, and so grateful that the foundation is a part of that process with us. But Heal the Heart really is about a community-led, multi-sector, anti-racist project where we're going to look at every system and remove barriers so that everyone can fulfill their destiny in Tacoma. But when we talked about getting GTFC involved, there was no hesitation on your part. You jumped right in. So tell me why this is important to the work that you do, and why you didn't say no and chose to be engaged, Kathi.
So, the heart of a community foundation is community. And one of the things I love about Heal the Heart and the number of the initiatives that are going on at the city right now is it's about that empowerment. And it's not just listening. I think there's a long history of listening and then systemically not paying attention to it. And so we want to move beyond just amplifying voices to really make sure they have the skills and the knowledge and the self-power to activate their voice. And the possibilities and opportunities of Heal the Heart is that people have, with the right supports and structures, the ability to have their voice influence. Not just be heard, but influence and impact what's happening. If we actually listen, not from, I want to listen so that I can hear how you're interrelating with what I'm doing, but what's your lived experience? What's in the way from your perspective? So Heal the Heart has the opportunity to do that in a number of areas. And we can't fix anything else until we get at that core racism that is really stopping us from being a thriving community.
That's so incredibly important to get to that core. And what I love about Heal the Heart is that, like I said, it's multi-sector, right? So we're talking about education, we're talking about police transformation, we're talking about the environment, right? So I mean, there are all these things that we're talking about that have got to change, because it isn't just one system. So let me ask you all this. I'm going to ask you kind of the final question here. What is, if you could think of all the things that we're doing in community, what is the thing that is giving you hope? Because I know it's been a really tough year for everyone. But as you think about what's happened and moving forward, what's the one thing that's giving you hope? What's the one thing that you get up in the morning and say, you know what, it is going to be different because this is going to happen? So what's giving you hope? What's filling up your heart every day? Rowan, we'll start with you.
The opportunities and the space for youth to step up and share and express their concerns. I mean, it's constantly pushed, the narrative is constantly pushed that we are going to be the next generation, we are going to be the leaders after everything that happens. But sometimes it goes unseen that we really don't have the space to do so. We really don't have the space to fulfill and enact and hone in on our leadership skills. But having all of these commissions, having all of these programs, and having authoritative figures reach out and want to work with youth, and seeing the youth step up and fulfilling voices of people who aren't heard is extremely inspiring. Knowing that everyone within this community is working for the greater future is is what really is helping everyone rest. I mean, through all of this, through everything that's going on and how crazy and fast-paced this world is, but knowing that everyone is trying and doing their best to fulfill their role within this community, it's really cool.
That is pretty exciting. And you know what? Speaking of that you're inspired by people talking to you, we're inspired by you. Marquis, what's giving you hope?
Yeah, I think what's giving me hope is like the tenacity of this moment and how people are showing up. You know, I think for generations, right, folks have not been empowered in the way that we have to like speak truth to power, right? Like, you know, as an activist, I think it's my job to kind of like help create the record, right? Get every single moment, every single policy piece, every single statement is like one step towards a better future. And like I think we've done a really good job of creating that record and showing where our values are. And now it's time to get things out that actually move us along that path, you know? Like we're seeing so many people who are just engaging in a way that we haven't seen, right? And people showing up through social media and marches and zines and art, right? We really believe in art as like a catalyst, you know, from the FDR era and the great mobilization that we saw back then, right? They used posters and films and movies to really get people to engage around common cause and common purpose. And I think we're getting there again. Like I think we're doing it. You know, I think we were a little bit slow for a while, but we're getting back into that spirit of like what community looks like. And it looks like showing up and, right, and maybe being a little brass sometimes and maybe being a little bit brutally honest, but like coming from a place of like love and compassion. Yeah. Because like we got so much to do, you know. We have a lot to fix. We only have like, you know, a decade to get most of our emissions cut, right? Yeah. We have to make sure we're housing our neighbors, and there's all these things that we're dealing with right now. And we have to have everyone working at whatever angle they can show up. And so that's what gives me so much hope, is like the tenacity of how much we're showing up.
That's awesome. That's awesome. Kathi, what about for you?
So I think a lot of this year has been sharing the narratives, people's personal stories. And that kind of fits into, that's how you make the intergenerational connections. That's how you take the value and you build on it. And people are so willing to share their personal experience. And I'm seeing it manifest itself in things like, well, one of the last things that Pierce County Connected is doing is a huge push with nonprofits around vaccine equity. It's not the set up the pop-up clinics or the mass drive-thrus, because there are people doing that. It's the heart and the will and the story of how this is the way you care for each other and yourself and your family and your community, and getting to the facts. Let's just clear it out and tell our stories. Yeah. And the power of that is having people show up. So I'm pretty excited about that kind of engagement in our community.
Well, it's funny, we didn't plan it this way, but you all just very easily built upon each other's stories.
We're working together.
And, you know, I mean,
storytellers, you know?
this is the Tacoma way. This is how we do it together. And I think it's conversations like these and the work that you all are doing individually, but what our city's doing collectively, that makes all the difference. And I always hold Tacoma up as a model, because not in any of these conversations this morning did one of you say, well, my organization or what I'm doing, right? We all recognize that it is a we. And to my young people, and I say my young people, just because
including me.
Right there, yeah, you too. You're my young people too. But we can't wait for you. You know, I don't subscribe to the story that young people are our future. Young people are our future. I believe they are present and they are now, and we should engage you now, because it shouldn't be left up to us to decide what kind of world you want. We should be hearing from you, telling us what kind of world you want. And I am so grateful to the Mayor's Youth Commission and Rowan for you being here today and for the work that you all are doing. You chose that name. I didn't ask you to call yourself the Mayor's Youth Commission, but I'm grateful and just so appreciative for your work and for being our vice chair this year. And then Marquis, boy, just I want to say an up and comer, but you are here, you are now, and we are so grateful, not just for your leadership, but for your incredible passion around not just the environment, but engaging young people and getting them educated to understand what role they play. I think young people can be so much more effective sometimes than us adults. So grateful to that. And then Kathi, so thank you for joining us. And then Kathi, the Greater Tacoma Community Foundation doesn't do just one thing. They don't focus just in one area. And I'm so grateful that, years ago when there was a need to pull our youth together, you started the Youth Philanthropy Board in the midst of COVID, 5 days. we don't normally get stuff done in 5 days, but you all pivoted very quickly and took care of our most essential workers and are continuing to support and grow this work. So grateful that you are here to talk about collaboration, and so glad all of you could join me today to have this conversation. In a year when there's been so much discussion around transformational change, I'm excited to close out this conversation by announcing the selections for Tacoma Reads 2021. These books have and will give us many opportunities to come together in a virtual conversation so that we can continue learning and getting to know our neighbors. Tacoma Reads is our beloved community reads program in partnership with the Tacoma Public Library. And this year, I'm honored to be joined by the Tacoma Urban League as our lead sponsor to enjoy the themes of race, social justice, and healing. We've selected 3 titles again this year so that readers of all ages can participate in activities and discussions around these themes through the work of incredible authors and illustrators. I'm so excited to announce our titles for this year. For our children, we've selected Jacqueline Woodson's book, The Day You Begin, a beautifully illustrated picture book about finding the courage to connect even when you feel scared and alone. For young adults, A Good Kind of Trouble by Lisa Moore Ramey. It's about a young woman who learns about family, friendship, and for standing up for what's right. And our adult title is the #1 New York Times bestseller from a Pulitzer Prize winning author, Isabel Wilkerson, and her book, Cast. In this brilliant book, Isabel Wilkerson gives us a masterful portrait of an unseen phenomenon in America. She explores through an immersive, deeply researched narrative and the stories of real people how America today and throughout history has been shaped by a hidden caste system, a rigid hierarchy of human rankings. We can't wait to welcome her to Tacoma. So as I close, let me say this. Whether it is becoming an anti-racist Tacoma, addressing climate change, or recovering stronger from COVID-19, the city and I cannot transform Tacoma alone. It takes the heart of all people across the community and their expertise to help us transform. Bringing people together across different viewpoints and lived experiences can help us find innovative solutions and ultimately the best outcomes for everyone in our city. The issues will be the issues, but how we treat each other, again, that's what matters. We are compassionate Tacoma, and especially in these unprecedented times, we are stronger together. I hope you will join us for our next conversation as I discuss our path forward. Thank you.